My name's Sue Phillips. I'm a member of the National Committee of the Socialist Equality Party in Australia and convener of the Committee for Public Education. Last month, behind the backs of the population, the Australian Labor Party joined hands with the Liberal National Coalition government to ram through a series of blatantly anti-democratic bills through both houses of Parliament within 24 hours. The new bills compel political parties that do not have a seat in the Parliament to submit lists of 1,500 members to the Australian Electoral Commission, suddenly trebling the previous requirement of 500 members. The additional 1,000 members must be submitted by December the 2nd this year. This is an extraordinarily short time frame and under conditions of worsening COVID pandemic and widespread lockdown restrictions. The purpose of the bills is a desperate attempt to muzzle opposition to the increasingly discredited political establishment. These bills have an immediate impact on more than 30 registered political parties. Without party registration, the Socialist Equality Party will not appear on the ballot in elections. The SEP has launched a campaign alerting workers and young people to the situation. We are demanding the repeal of these laws and calling on workers and young people to support the campaign by signing up as an electoral member and taking forward the fight for a socialist alternative. This morning, I'm pleased to speak to Andreja Pejic on this issue. Andreja is an internationally acclaimed model and now working in cinema as an actor. She is a socialist-minded artist who is an outspoken opponent against war. She has defended and still defends Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and an advocate for transgender rights. On the issue of identity politics, Andreja has emphasised the domination and centrality of class division in understanding capitalist society. Andreja was born in the former Yugoslavia in 1991 and migrated to Australia in 1999 in the aftermath of the US-NATO war against Serbia. She grew up in Melbourne in the working class suburb of Broadmeadows with her mother, grandmother and brother. Hi Andreja and welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me and for the opportunity to speak.
Andreja, you've just finished filming a short video for social media explaining the anti-democratic electoral laws and appealing to your many thousands of followers to find out more and sign up as an electoral member of the SEP. How did you find out about the legislation, considering you live and work most of the time outside of Australia?
Well, I try to stay informed on Australian politics, even when I'm away from Australia. But the first time I heard about this particular issue was by reading it on your website, on the World Socialist website, which I guess is not the first time that, I've read something on your website that I haven't read anywhere else. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think these laws had the wholehearted support of the Labor Party, and what do you think the purpose of these laws is?
Well, I think that, while I'm, I guess, disappointed with the Labour Party, I'm not exactly surprised. I think that, the same thing that you can say about the Labour Party, you can probably also say about the Democratic Party. I think that these parties are barely left-wing anymore. I think at some point intelligent and progressive people need to come to the conclusion that they have moved further and further to the right, and I don't think that they're coming back. And the Labour Party has been complicit in almost every imperialist war in the past 30 years. They have presided over a massive lowering of living standards for the Australian working class. They work in the interests of big business. They have abandoned the working class. I originally come from one of the most, working class suburbs in Melbourne, and which has totally experienced the reality of their economic policies. So I think that when you have very little very little to offer that's progressive to the people, the only way to go is right. And I think that clearly they can see that their support is declining. They have a vested interest in maintaining, the political monopoly of the two-party system, and they don't want to accept any kind of criticism, and clearly they're scared of any kind of movement which is outside of their control, and which threatens their position and their hold on power.
And you will have noticed that there's been a wall of media silence on this issue. I mean, the only organisation that has fought to bring it to the attention of workers is the Socialist Equality Party. What do you think about the fact that the media, apart from I think one article, a small article, has not mentioned this at all?
Well, I think that we like to think that we're living in countries where there is a free media, and I think so much of that is a mirage. The media is very much dominated by the biggest political parties, and it very much serves the interests of the corporate elite. We have very little of what's called progressive journalism. There are very few genuinely anti-establishment voices. Obviously, Julian Assange was one of those voices, and that is why, he's in prison, and look at what they are doing to him. And so I think the blackout is a mix of stupidity and carelessness, and of course a desire to maintain the status quo. And if democratic principles are trampled on, then that is just what needs to happen. And there's very little, I think, democratic consciousness in the upper middle and upper class circles, which is where most people in the media come from. And as a model and as an actress, I've often overheard conversations at fancy dinner parties that say things like democracy just doesn't work, and mainstream corporate media is an expert at manipulating public opinion and at distracting people from real issues that concern their lives. And it's all about smoke screens, and it's all about look over here and here and here, and don't look there, and look here. And so
the laws give the Australian Electoral Commission the power to deregister a party whose name contains words already claimed by another party, unless that party gives consent to do so. And they've already indicated that this could be names like communists, socialists. What do you think about that aspect of these laws?
The first thing that comes to mind is what gives the Australian Electoral Commission the right to dictate to other political parties what to call themselves. Why should the AEC possess that power in a democratic country? It's also, in a way, very revealing, because I think the Australian ruling class, like their counterparts all across the world, are scared of the growth of socialist and communist ideas. And, clearly capitalism is failing to develop in the way that they hoped it would. The working class hasn't been wiped out, and everyone hasn't become middle class, and inequality has only increased. The average working class person in the West is worse off today than they were in the 1960s. And capitalism has failed to deal with the coronavirus the same way it's failed to deal with global warming. And so, we get to the point where this system is very much insolvent. And I think with these big politicians, you can see there's something I feel like is very wrong with them, and if you watch them, I don't feel like that there's a lot of life in them, and they're also very kind of bland and cynical, and or sometimes they appear very artificial and hysterical, and I think that's because they defend a system which has reached the end. And so of course they want to attack smaller parties, they want to attack socialist and communist parties, because it's a constant reminder that they are on the wrong path, and I'm sure that they would love for the world to be moving in a better direction and for them to be leading the world in a better direction, but it isn't. And so I think that we've come to a point where it's important for the people to explore other ideas and other pathways, and that is what you guys represent, and obviously they want to limit that as much as possible.
In your short video, you point to, very importantly, the newly established Arcus alliance between the United States, the UK and Australia. And this was signed off less than a month after this electoral legislation, was rammed through the Parliament. Would you like to comment on that, and also your concerns about the drive to war against China?
Yeah, I think that it comes at a time of this new legislation comes at a time of breaking a breakdown of international social relations. It comes at a time of a massive crisis, and I've always spoken openly about my disdain for imperialist warfare. I'm a war refugee myself, and I think humanitarian imperialism is one of the greatest lies of our century so far. I don't think that there is anything humanitarian about imperialism, and I think that the societies that are currently in rubble are proof of that. I read on your website that Afghanistan is destined for another famine, on top of everything that country has gone through. There are very few movies and books that have, I think, told the truth, really about what the people of Syria and what the people of Palestine and Libya and Afghanistan and Iraq have truly gone through, and I don't think that you can ignore that. I don't think that you can talk about the refugee crisis, which is the biggest refugee crisis since World War II. I don't think you can talk about that without confronting the reality of imperialism. And I think the AU-KUS military alliance is a disturbing development. I think the US sending nuclear submarines to Australia is a disturbing development. I think that war with China is unimaginable because it could easily escalate into nuclear warfare. And I think that it's very important for us to face that reality, for us to confront the reality that another world war is very much a possibility. And I think historically the bourgeoisie is incapable, they are incapable of stopping this. And I think that the only thing that can really stop this is the unity of the working class all across the world.
In a SEP statement that we posted on the World Socialist website, we place the imposition of these anti-democratic laws within the context of moves internationally by the ruling elite to suppress democratic rights of the working class. We make mention of the suppression of working class voting rights in the United States, the rise of the far right, fascist movement, not just in the United States, but internationally. I'd like to just ask you, were you in the US during Trump's attempted January 6th coup? And how do you see the political situation emerging in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the political situation has improved since the January 6th coup. Trump is a free man, and the impeachment trial seems like a travesty. The situation that I mean, I think it shows that he's clearly backed by a whole section of the American elite, which sees fascism as a viable tool, as one of the only ways of maintaining their rule. And even President Biden has said that American democracy is on the brink of collapse. And I was in the U.S. when that happened, and I just remember this video on Twitter, and this image of a policeman, opening the gates and allowing these Trump supporters to enter the Congress, where they obviously threaten congressmen and congresswomen with abduction, and the contrast of how they treated those Trump supporters compared to how they treated the anti-police massive protests that occurred in the US over the summer. And I think that we're definitely living in serious times.
Previously, you mentioned the question of COVID. In every country now, the situation is escalating at an enormous pace. Infection rates in the United States are rising to historical levels. Same situation now in Australia. Obviously, not exactly the same situation. And in every government, whether you live in the UK or US or Australia, we're being told that everyone has to learn to live with the virus. What do you think about that, and how do you actually assess the response of governments to COVID?
Yeah, I think that the most tragic part of COVID is that it could have been prevented. And then the second biggest tragedy is that it can still be prevented. If the leading scientists are saying that, with the right health measures and with the vaccines that we've created, which are an incredible achievement of science, if the means, to end this pandemic, if they exist, and if it would take only around 2 months, but yet we're being told that that we have to live with the virus, shows that I think we're living in a socio-economic system that has separated itself from reality, and in fact it is at war with reality, and it is at war with truth, and it is at war with scientific truth, and all other truth. And I think our governments and our ruling elites keep saying that there isn't enough money, and the economic costs of eradication are too high, while they hand over enormous sums of money to Wall Street and to finance, and the profits of the wealthiest members of our society. And so in a way they're also at war with economic truth. And I don't think that any person in this world has to suffer, and that any person in this world has to die from a completely preventable virus. Yeah, I think that there's plenty of money and that we produce enough, enough wealth in the world to stop something like that from happening.
Your video that you are going to distribute on social media appeals to your followers in Australia, workers and young people, to sign up for electoral membership of the Socialist Equality Party. Why should they do that?
When people think about socialism, and I think when they think about revolution, they imagine something really bleak and something bloody and very repressive. And I think it's important to understand that socialism and capitalism are mortal enemies. And you cannot expect to learn the truth about socialism from a school system, controlled by the capitalist ruling class. You can't expect to learn the truth about socialism or communism from a schooling system in Australia or America or probably even China. And that is what I think the Socialist Equality Party has done, and that is what the World Socialist website does. You have shed light on what socialism actually means. And on top of that, you have stood on principle over and over again against so many attacks on freedoms, against the Me Too movement, against the escalation towards war. And on top of that, you have also stayed with the working class, and as someone who comes from the working class, that means a great deal, because there aren't too many brilliant and intelligent people even thinking about the working class very much less spending time to educate it and spending time to lift its consciousness, or much less to spending time to liberate it. And I think that this is incredible work that you do, and that is a perspective that's missing. I think that we deserve to see the perspective of the bottom 90%, as someone who's also experienced life, in the upper class world. From firsthand experience, I can tell you that there aren't many people that are thinking about these same issues. I think most of our politics and most of our culture is geared around the top 10%, and focuses on the top 10%. And at the end of the day, there are differences between middle class people and elite people, and there are differences between different sections of the ruling elite. But when it comes to exploiting the working class, when it comes to keeping the working class oppressed, they all seem to be very comfortable with this, and they all seem to agree that this is just a part of life. And even the people that are a little bit uncomfortable with it are not willing to do anything about it. And because yoga and meditation and the Met Gala and luxury fashion are just more important, than the working class. And that is the opposite of what you guys do, and you have dedicated your lives to this class, and your record shows that, and you deserve to be on every ballot all across the world, and we deserve to have a revolutionary movement that lifts the world out of the dark ages. I think humanity needs to go forwards, not backwards, and I think we have to fight all reaction, and I don't think that there is a better example of that than you guys.
Thanks, Andreja, for those really thoughtful comments and your support for the campaign. I mean, hopefully this will encourage other sections of the artistic community to speak out against these anti-democratic laws and really follow your lead. just to add, I mean, as Andreja has so powerfully expressed in her comments just now, we also appeal to all existing electoral members and our readers, members of our rank and file committees, and all working people and students to help us recruit those extra 1,000 members that we need, electoral members, to retain our party registration. So if you would like to find out more, please contact the Socialist Equality Party via our website, Facebook and Twitter, and take a stand alongside others to support the Socialist Equality Party and maintain our registration. Thank you very much.
I can't think of a better step forward, a better stand than becoming an electoral member of the Socialist Equality Party.